All right, we are back. Let's go ahead and see how you did. So we're going to compare two fractions that have different denominators, right? Less than or greater than. So let's get started with the first way, finding the LCM. So that means we have to count by threes and count by twos. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, count by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, and whoa, right there I see it. I see that 6 is the least common multiple. So I'm going to turn both of these, make them both into a 6. So to do that, I'm going to go 1/3, and I need to multiply this by 2 to the top and the bottom. And that's going to end up being 2, 6. And then for 1/2, I'm going to have to multiply the top and the bottom by 3, which is going to turn that 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6. So I end up with 2, 6, and 3, 6. Since they have a common denominator of 6, it's very easy to see that we're just looking at 2 and 3, and which number is bigger? 3 is bigger, which means that 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this visually, because I wanted you guys to draw a picture. Now what I did is I just took some Post-it, like these are Post-it strips, and then I cut them so they're smaller. But it's kind of nice because they're the same exact size, so it's very easy to compare the fractions. So let's make this into, this is going to be the 1/3 one, and this is going to be the 1/2. So we're going to make this one into thirds, about like that or so. And then this one's going to be 1/2, okay? And this one is 1/3. And notice how when you divide something up into 3 sections, it's smaller than if you divide something up into 2 sections. So if you have 1/3 and you have 1/2, you know the more you divide something up, the smaller the sections are going to get. And if you only have one of them, one of each of them, you know that 1/2 is going to be bigger than 1/3 because 1/3 is getting divided up into smaller sections. Just like this, when you have 4 and 8, like 8 is going to be, the pieces in 8 are going to be way smaller than the pieces in 4. Now this isn't very straightforward because you have 3 and 5 on top. But if you had 1/4 and you had 1/8, you would know that 1/8 would be smaller because whenever you divide something into 8 things, it just gets really, really small. Like a good example of that would be right here with 1/5 and 1/8. And we'll look at this problem in a little bit. But you know that 8, they both have 1 in the top, okay? So this is a little bit more difficult because they have 2 different numbers, 3 and 5 in the top, so it's not as straightforward. But this, they have the same number, so they both have 1. So you know that something divided into 8 pieces and the same thing divided into 5, the thing that's divided into 8 pieces is going to be way smaller if you only have 1 of them than if you divide something into 5. So even without doing this, I know that this one is going to be smaller than that just because of that logic. But let's go ahead and get back here. So this is 1/3. We divided this into thirds. This is 1/2. We divided into halves. So we just have one of them. So 1/3 and then 1/2. Let me change up my color. Is right here. So it's clear that 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. So there we go. Okay, on to the next. We have 3/4 and 5/8. The first way that we're going to do this is by getting an LCM. And so we're going to count by 4s. 4, 8. Oh, shoot. Right there we see that all we got to do is count by 4s and it already is an 8. So, I mean, if we count by 8s, 8. Boom. They have a common, that's their common multiple right there. Right there, 8. So this is already an 8, so we don't have to do anything, which is awesome. We just need to turn this 4 into an 8. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go 3/4, so we need to turn that into an 8. So to make this 4 into an 8, we're going to multiply it by 2 to the top and the bottom. Remember, you always have to do that because this is 2 divided by 2, which is 1, and you can multiply anything by 1 and you get the same answer, just written in a different form. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. So we end up with 6/8. So we have 6/8 and 5/8. They have the same denominator, so we know that 6/8 is going to be, 6 is bigger than 5. So we know it's going to be 3/4 is going to be bigger than 5/8. However, let's go ahead and do our little strips here so we can look at it visually and see what's happening. I think it's really important to understand the visual concept of fractions, and this will help you in the long worm, whenever you're dealing with long worms, having fraction strips is going to help. No, it will not. Okay, so in the long term, if you start to really understand fractions visually, then it will make just fractions, dealing with fractions in general, easier on the long term is what I meant to say. Okay, so this one's 3/4. We're going to divide this into 4. So I need to cut it down the half, and that's pretty half-ish, kind of. And then to get 4ths, I need to cut this half into a half. So right there and right there. So that would be, each of those are a 4th. Now to get an 8ths, one thing is I can just make these exactly how these ones are. So I have 4ths, and then an 8th is each one of these 4ths have to get cut in half. So I'm going to cut that one in half, I'm going to cut that one in half, I'm going to cut that one in half, and I'm going to cut that one in half. So there we go. We have 8ths, and they're kind of, you know, they're kind of similar. So we have 3/4. So we need 3 out of these. Oh, 3 out of these for a little right there. So this is 3/4. 1, 2, 3 out of the 4. 3/4. Whoa, kind of got a little sloppy with my highlighting. Okay, and this one is 5/8. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's only going to go to right here. And visually, it's really cool to see how 5/8 is not as much as 3/4. 3/4 is definitely more than 5/8. But you can also see with 3/4 how it is the same thing as 6/8, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is 6/8, and you see how that line comes right down there. So 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. But anyways, back to the question that they're asking us, 3/4 is bigger than 5/8. Okay, I hope you guys got that one right. You both did it both ways. So we're going to go on to number 6. 1/2 and 3/5. So the first way we're going to do this is through finding the LCM. So we're going to count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then we're going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, and oh, do you see something? I see that their common multiple is 10, and it just so happens it's their least common as well. So that means in the denominator, we need to make each one of these a 10. So we have 1/2, and we need to make that into a 10. So we're going to have to multiply the bottom and the top by 5. That's going to give us 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10. And then for 3/5, we need to make this 5 turn into a 10 as well. So we're going to have to multiply that by 2 to the bottom and the top. So 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. So we are talking about 5/10 and 6/10. They have the same number in the denominator, so we're just looking at 5 and 6. And which number is bigger? 6 is bigger, which means 3/5 is bigger. So the alligator needs to eat the 3/5 because it's the bigger meal. Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and look at this using, we're going to look at it visually. Get my little Post-it strips here. Okay, so the first, this is going to be 1/2 right here. 1/2, and this is going to be 3/5. Okay, so I'm going to divide this into 1/2. Pretty straightforward, right down the middle. The 5ths they're a little bit more challenging. So make it right about like this. We'll call that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's about right. Okay, so this is 1/2. So we have right here, 1/2 goes to right there. And then this is 3/5. And it's kind of a close race, but 3/5 just inched out ahead. So that one is very, very close, but 3/5 is bigger. So just by the hair of a chinny chin chin. Well, you can see 6/10 and 5/10. It's 1/10 bigger. All right, let's move on to number 7. I hope you got that one right. Okay, and remember, I want you doing it both ways, this with the picture. Okay, 1/5 and 1/8. We need to find the LCM. So we have to count by 5s and count by 8s. Okay, I think I'm gonna count by 5s up here. So can you see that? Yes, you can. Okay, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And then I'm gonna count by 8s. Okay, 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. And if you can see, they both have 40, so that would be their least common multiple. So that means we need to turn each of these into a 40 on the denominator. So to do that, I need to multiply the 5 by 8 to the bottom and the top. I end up having 1 times 8, which is 8, and 5 times 8, which is 40. And then I need to do the same thing for 1/8. I need to make this into a 40, which means I need to multiply it by 5 to the bottom and the top. And that means 1 times 5 is 5, and 8 times 5 is, what is 8 times 5? It is 40. Yes, it is. Okay, so great. Now they have the same denominator. Okay, so we can just compare 8 and 5. Which number is bigger? And 8 is bigger. That means that 1/5 is bigger. The alligator's going to eat the bigger meal. 1/5 is greater than 1/8. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and get our strips out. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to remove these strips so I have a little bit more room. Right here and right here. Okay, this is going to be 1/5, and this strip is going to be 1/8. Okay, so 1/5, I'm going to eyeball this one again. So that's about 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, and 4/5. Not bad. Okay, 1/8. So 1/8, I know that it's got to be directly in half, which is going to be there. And then each one of these has to be in halves to split it into fourths. And then each one of my fourths has to be in half. So this has to be in half, that has to be in half, that has to be in half, and that has to be in half. And now I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, yeah. I don't like my 8s. I'm going to try my 8s again. I'm sorry, I got to get another one. I don't like it. It just... I'm gonna do it again. Okay, so this is gonna be 1/2, 1/2. This is 1/4, right about there. And this is one right about there. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I gotta divide each one of these in half, which is more about there. There, there, and there. So now that's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1/5 is right here. And like we said before, if they both have a 1, you know that the 8s are going to be smaller pieces. And you can really see that here. 1/8. So the 1/8 is definitely way smaller than the 1/5. So we know that the 1/5 is going to be bigger than the 1/8. Okay, so I hope you got that one right. Let's move on to this last one right here, 3/8 versus 1/3. So the first thing we have to do is just go ahead and count by 3s and count by 8s to get a common denominator on the bottom. So we need to find out what that LCM is, or that least common multiple. So I'm going to count by 8s again. So 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. And then I need to count by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. And I'm running out of room. Oh, I'm running out of room, aren't I? Yeah, I got to keep going. 18, I'm going to move it down here. 21, 24. And we can see that they both have a 24 right there. So that's going to be our, what's it going to be? It's going to be our common denominator. It's going to be the number in the bottom. So we need to take this 3/8 and make that 8 into a 24. We do that by multiplying it by 3. 8 times 3 is 24. Got to do it to the top and the bottom. So we end up with 3 times 3, which is 9. 9 over 8 times 3, which is 24. And then we got to do the same thing for 1/3. 1/3, we need to make that 3 into a 24. So we do that by multiplying it by 8 to the top and the bottom. So 1 times 8 is 8. 3 times 8 is 24. So now the two things we're looking at that have the common denominator, ooh, this is really close, are 9 24ths and 8 24ths. So since they both have a bottom common denominator of 24, we just look at 9 and 8. And which number is bigger? 9 is bigger, which means that 3/8 is bigger than 1/3. It's greater than 3/8 is greater than 1/3. So the last thing we're going to do is just look at that visually. And since this is really, really close, our picture should be really, really close as well. So I'm getting my strips out right now. Okay, here we go. Okay. Uh-oh. Sticky side needs to be down. There we go. There's one of them. And here's the other one. Okay. Line them up nice. Perfect. Okay, so this one is going to be 3/8, and this one's going to be 1/3. So to have it be 3/8, we need to divide it into half first. Okay, and then we got to divide the half into half to get 4ths. And then to get 8ths, we divide all of the 4ths into half, and then we'll get 8. So it's just an easy way of making 8ths. Okay, now we need to make 1/3. So it's about like that, and about like that. Okay, so there we go. We have our 1/3. So let's go ahead and do our 3/8. So this is 3/8. Right there. 3/8, and then this would be 1/3. And you can see that it's so close. But 1/3 is smaller than 3/8. So if you got all those right, great job. And I will see you next time. All right. Goodbye.